Three. Alrighty, guys. I hope we've gonna have a good turnout. Those of y'all that are football fans, I know some of y'all will be watching football. Sadly, I'm not missing anything because my Arkansas Razorbacks are getting absolutely pummeled and absolutely embarrassed. So I'm very happy to be sitting down today with our guest. Uh, one of really one of the first Force Recon men I was able to make contact with, and has been instrumental in helping me get in touch with some of our previous guests, and actually really keeping me straight on uh, Force Recon history and information. Today we are joined by Mr. Rick Rabenold, also known as Rabbi. Um, he was with First Force Recon for varying years, 67, was it 68 and 69 or
67, 8, 70, and 71.
okay, see, guys, he's got a varying list there of years with Force Recon. So we've got a lot of great pictures that Mr. Rick's dug up for us. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to him and let him give a little bio on himself to get started. Mr. Rick, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. In my background, I signed up for the Marine Corps as a senior in high school on the 120-day delay program with a good friend from high school, Kenny Smith, and then two other friends that were a year behind us. They quit school to join the Marine Corps that summer with us. We ended up at Parris Island in beginning of August of 66. From Parris Island, we made it up to Camp Geiger at Lejeune. And at that point, we were learning a little bit about other units in the Marine Corps. I had a couple of uncles that were already in the Marine Corps and career men. So I did have a little background on the unit. And my goal was to trying to get into the Force Recon community. And at that point, they come around and they do some interviewing and testing. But the day I recall that they came, I had twisted a knee in one of our activities, and didn't get through that. So evolution, being a basic grunt, I was on my way to Vietnam. So I hit staging December 66, and did a couple of weeks and got ready to go overseas. At that point, there were still a lot of troop ships, and folks were going uh, by sea. Some were traveling in the air, but my particular group took a 3-week ride out of San Diego and pulled into Danang Harbor in January, toward the end of January of 67. And my orders were to go to First Force, which uh, was a goal of mine. However, I didn't get into stateside training and showed up in Vietnam as a basic infantry person with no reconnaissance background, which many of us had at that point. There was an abundance of need and not that many that were stateside trained. Uh, so I got to Camp Reasoner about the last week of January 67. And our commanding officer was Major Laurie. And he assigned me to the 5th Platoon. I went down and I was with the Killer King group and stuff for a couple of days. until I started my RIP program, which was the indoctrination that new folks into the force company or FORCE RECON Battalion went through training and learned or were updated and refreshed on map reading, weapons, landmine, booby trap, different types of little training. But it was roughly 7 days of indoctrination into the company. And at that point, I went from 5th Platoon into the 1st Platoon. And great experience. All new folks, didn't know anybody at that point. And found that here at Camp Reasoner was the odd numbers, the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Platoons of 1st Force, along with 2 letter companies from the battalion, Bravo and Charlie. And the rest of the battalion and force were down in Chulai, the compound. So Alpha and Delta and the even numbers 2, 4, and 6 from 1st Force were down in Chulai. And we evolved. I ended up with 1st Force, 1st Platoon, which at that time, the team name was Groucho Marx. And Groucho Marx was led by Lieutenant Eric Barnes. And my platoon sergeant was Norman Jennings. And we became countersign and dogma roughly the beginning of February. A lot of the team names changed, and 3rd Platoon, which was my next hooches down from where we lived, became, they were hateful. And classmate, 5th Platoon had already been Killer Kane, but was now also Killer Kane and Brisbane. So we had 6 teams that ran out of force. And I was finally ready. And in February, ran my first patrol, which I ran with Team Countersign. And the 1st Platoon's leadership was tied up. And Lieutenant Mike Henry took us out. And along on my first patrol was Lieutenant Andy Finlayson, which was his second snap-in patrol before he took over, actually, Killer Kane. So we went on to the Ongthu slope, and you know, being barely 18, wide-eyed, first patrol, was a little different experience, and we were dropped in the wrong place. Lieutenant Henry, you know, called a spot around, got us located, made sure we knew where we were. It was either the first or second night that I had just gotten the watch, and Marine named Moore said, you know, he just cupped his ear that he was hearing things, and I was on the watch and kept hearing noises, and all of a sudden I woke up Moore and a couple of the guys, and whatever it was seemed to like want to charge us. And the first thing I shot at was, I don't know. And I had the M79 with a flechette round. And if anybody could have saw my eyes in the middle of the night, then they were wide open, quite huge. But that was my first patrol, and then we went on from there. Throughout my first tour, I had a lot of different adventures, whether it be firefights or just things in the jungle that irritate you, can hurt you. upset you, make you anxious. Rotated, went home, spent a year or two at home, and went back to Vietnam again January of 70, and fortunately got back into First Force. We spent January to August as First Force. At that point, we were running for 3 MAF. In the beginning, in my first tour, we were attached to the battalion, and we actually worked for division. So the second tour, probably about March, we became with the division again, and ran as First Force until August. The company stood down, and we became Subunit 1, First Force, and about 25 of us stayed in country and went over to Camp Reasoner and lived with the battalion. I stayed till 71. First Force was gone. The last of us had dwindled in January, and the battalion spent another month or 6 weeks running, and then they stood down and went home. That pretty much took me. I went home, spent a few months at Lejeune, and after 5 years, got out of the Marine Corps and became a civilian. That was my quick 5 years in the military.
Wow, it's you've definitely got quite the resume, and I mean there are not only serving with Colonel Finlayson and all the Gunny Jennings and all of those men, the Force Recon guys at that point in time. There, I mean, you were serving amongst legends in not only the recon community but the Marine Corps as a whole. Can you one thing I've always been interested in is y'all in country, how y'all would do training. Um, when did you get your jump wings? I know I think it had to do 5 for the Navy wings, and then or the silver wings, and then was it 10 to get the gold wings, or how was y'all's training jump wise?
At 5 jumps, you got your Army wings, and then at 10, your Navy, your gold. In country, well, a lot of the guys, if they were stateside trained, went to Fort Benning and jumped with the Army. In country, we sent people to Okinawa, and periodically we would have classes, availability and billets to go to Okinawa. And April 67, we sent, I don't know the exact number, 20, 30 guys. You'll run an in-country pre-jump, junior jump, which is a lot of PT, learning to do some PLS, and they'll select enough to fill the billets. And at that point, April 67, 3 of my guys, Mike Pistorino, Pee Wee Palmer, and Jim Hawkshurst. The 3 of them out of my group, my platoon, went to that class. And Lieutenant Torres was the officer in charge. And I think Doc Laporte was in that class. John Slowick out of Andy's group was in that class. But they did a week or 2 of the pre-jump, and then they went to Okinawa roughly 3 weeks. So the guys were gone out of running patrols maybe about 5 or 6 weeks. and we got those guys back probably mid-May. Me, I didn't go until my second tour to jump, and I had done jumps out of with Navy paramedics, and I think that's where I did my initial jumps, and then got my last of my jumps in country. We used to jump at a place called Red Beach outside of Danang over towards Namo Bridge. That's where our practice jumps were. So I eventually got the gold wings, and then we got Vietnamese jump wings that for jumping in country with the Vietnamese. But we also sent folks to scuba school, and stateside, a lot of the guys had gone to Key West, or I think Coronado, and from Vietnam, fortunate guys got to go down to Subic Bay and jump with the SLF, the ship's repair facility down there with the, I think it was the UDT that actually was running it. And great school. I got to go there in September of '67. Probably the week after we lost a couple of guys and Doc Laporte went missing. I went to scuba school. But
So you were dual cool while you were serving. I mean, and weren't you in scuba school with Doc Norton at a time?
no, Doc was from Third Force, and we were together in 1970.
Wow.
Third Force had stood down roughly February of '70, and we got maybe 25 guys from Third Force at First Force that had so much time left and ran with us. And a bunch of the Third Force guys went into a cadre that was doing training, and a bunch went home. But Doc was finishing his scuba class and got to go to jump while he was still down there, and then he got injured and was a little later returning. But yeah, Doc and I were together probably March to July or so, April or August, July, August.
Wow. Okay. Let's see here. People are still listening in, but I've got a photo of Norm. Mr. Norm is this is one you sent me. I had never seen of the Gunny. I've got a few more. I forgot the time period, but he was with y'all for a period of time, and then he actually went over and was one of the Force Recon men attached to MACV SOG. Interestingly enough,
yeah, he was my platoon sergeant when I first got there in January '67, and he had been there since '66 when the company they were outside Danang. Then they went up to Dong Ha. They were at Dong Ha till mid-November of '66, and the company moved south and split between Danang and Chu Lai mid-November '66. And when I had gotten there, Norman had been wounded. There was a patrol in January that we used to kid about not being long enough to even take credit for a patrol, because mixed blessings as to prepping LZs before you went in, and pros and cons to it. But this particular patrol, the LZ was prepped, but it was done the night before of the insert. So the bad guys had that evening, all that night into the morning to do whatever they may want to do if there was anybody in the area, which their insert LZ had a booby trap of I believe it was a 250-pound bomb, and patrol lasted about 8 minutes, where they went in two 46s, guys scattered, were going for the bush tree line, and Norman thinks he tripped it, and he heard what he thought was a 50 cal round that set this bomb off, and 4 or 5 guys got hurt. One guy named Dermont got severely wounded with a big hole in him, and that's when a lot of people gave kudos to Doc Ott, because we didn't know, folks didn't know if the whole LZ was booby trapped or what, but without worrying about his personal concern, he just took off from one side of the LZ to the other to go, there's Doc Ott, to try and take care of Dermont. And the folks got out, and Dermont ended up being medevaced, ended up in Japan, and most people figured it, he passed on. But a month or 2 months later, got correspondence that he had survived, and our good friend Doc Ott, quite a corpsman. So Norman Jennings on that one got injured, and Pistorino was sitting across from him on the extract chopper, and just said he was watching, and that was Mike's first patrol. And Mike looked at Sergeant Jennings, who just sat there with his arm, and you could see the blood dripping down off his arm onto the deck of the chopper. And that was pretty much his last, but he was still our platoon sergeant. And then he evolved and went into the MACV SOG.
I've got a photo. That's what I was trying to look for. I've got a picture of Pistorino I was gonna bring up, but I'll show that. But yeah, it's, I mean, guys, there's not much out there on excuse me, on the Gunny, but I've shared a little bit of the correspondence he's done with me, and this is, of course, when he was with SOG, the NAD section. That's his interpreter, and they were going into North Vietnam. There's their flippers to go swimming in. Pretty heavy duty stuff, and that leads me to a question. Were they looking for particular guys? Did you ever get a NAD or a SOG or a Green Beret coming to ask, would y'all like to come over to the NAD side of the thing? Or
I don't recall me ever being quizzed on it. I know different ones, along with Gunny Jennings, Sergeant Paul Long at that point. He ran with us until the end of the year in '67. But when I was back in 1970, Paul was now an officer, and he was with MACV SOG.
Wow.
And, it's hard to tell where some of the guys evolved to. That first tour, being 18 years old too, I didn't have the experience and the knowledge of guys like Sergeant Jennings. But being young, they could transform me to whatever they wanted.
Absolutely. I mean, God, I'm sorry, guys. I've got the beginning of a cold, I think. But when I've spoke to the Gunny, and he still prefers me to call him Gunny. So anytime you hear me say Gunny, guys, it's Norm Jennings. But the Gunny, I mean, he really doesn't like talking about himself. It's like pulling teeth, but by God, he'll talk about you. And I know you won't like me saying this, but Gunny Jennings told me, as far as the men he knew in Vietnam and First Force, he thinks you were one of the best and probably ran more patrols than any other Force Recon Marine in Vietnam. His words.
Hmm. Well, he's a flattering individual, and I love him to death.
He is. He is a sweet, sweet man, and yet again, you're one of the persons that helped hook me up with him. I had a photo of you speaking, and this is one of my favorites now. I've seen a chopped up version, but you finally got me the full version. You being young and wild and dumb. Look at that guy.
Yeah, that was a early photo just to send home, and yeah, I was probably all of about 130 pounds.
I was about to say, you look like you got a slim fighting waist right there.
Yeah, I probably 5'7", at the most in the 130s. When I talked to Pistorino, he says I couldn't have been more than 115, and I said, well, you were like 170. He goes, no, I was 135. So we go back and forth, and either way, I was too lazy to be a big guy. Yeah, I had to notch that belt up.
It and on your arm, my dad had his Marine Corps tattoo on his left, of course, but he had the chesty bulldog with a DI with a Smokey the Bear hat and a cigar hanging out of his mouth with USMC under it. Is that your Marine Corps tattoo, or what kind of ink are you sporting there?
That's my Marine Corps tattoo, and it's got the old like a World War I helmet. And
Okay.
I got that Christmas of '66, and it's still there. And color fades.
Oh yeah, Dad's. It was green. I can't even describe it as green. It was just a light. You could tell there was a tattoo. The black was still holding a little bit, but boy, it definitely faded. I wanted him to get it touched up, but he was like, as long as you can see it up close, I'm happy with it. So,
Yeah.
we're going to be flipping around. This is going to be a little unconventional because you've got so much experience to draw from. And we've got a lot of guys that are recreators and collectors that watch. And Daniel's a good guy that helps out with not only the designs on the podcast that people see in my logos, but he's very interested about camo of all types. He was interested, and I've got some photos to bring up too. In your opinion, which fatigue, the OD green, tiger stripes, or the ERDL camouflage did you like best, and which one of the three in your experience worked best in the jungle?
Works best. The camouflage, I like all of them better than the tiger stripe.
Mm-hmm.
The OD, the regular green ones that we had in the beginning, those. And those were fine. And the stateside stuff we brought with us, deteriorated, didn't last long, whether it be the utilities or the boots. But those were good. They held water but dried out fairly fast. During the monsoons, you stayed wet all the time anyway. And once we, evolved into the camouflage ones, they were comfortable. I mean, they were easily hidden in the jungle. A lot of places plain green was good. But yeah, those were good. Yeah, that's 1970.
Wow.
And I had an M14 with me there.
Okay. How, I mean, wow. Speaking of that, I've got two questions on that, and Daniel, I'll get to your other one. Um, uh, with the M14, you know, Andy, when he got there, Colonel Finlinson, he got he said AR, but I think he had a Car 15 at the time, or he may have actually had a 16, but I think he had a Car 15. Uh, did you just, I know you tested the stoners, which we're going to get into that. That's another point. But did you just prefer the 14 all throughout? Did you ever take the 16 or a Car 15, or what was your thought process on that?
Uh, when I went over on the ship, I took a 14 with me. All right, so when I first got in country, we had 14s. In February of '67, we got the XM16E1 with the 3 prongs that were good for opening the sea ration case banding. We got those. And then later in February is when stoners arrived, the 63A weapon system. So at that point, there were 14, 16s, and stoners. A couple of guys still, you know, had a grease gun hidden somewhere, but that's the stoner machine gun. And ours in first force, our 3rd platoon was the test platoon. So they had all the weapons and the light machine guns. I know in 5th platoon, Jim Hager with Andy carried a stoner machine gun, and we had one which mostly Pistorino would carry it for us, or I had it a couple of times. And in the battalion, it was one platoon from Bravo Company tested stoners, and actually a grunt company, Lima 3-1, also got them to test. And I remember in my civilian life, I was working, and I was out of town at a plant in a town of 5,000 in Iowa, and I got a phone call, and it turned out to be Joe Gibbs, who was the skipper of Lima 3-1, and he was trying to put together information in a book form to apprise folks as to the reliability and how well that the stoners performed, and how in righteousness or injustice it was to take them back. I mean, since in my memory, it was since we already had the 16s adopted, that's why we didn't continue with the stoners. I'm not sure if that was the reason, but the stoners were, particularly in '67, performed better because when we got them, they were having the issues, and some of it was ammunition, some of it was weapons, and that's when the hill fights there in the spring of '67, they found so many of our grunts trying to clear jams, and were killed for it. But yeah, at that point we had those 3. I liked the 14 because it had the good knockdown power. It was heavy, so magazines were heavy, rounds were heavy. You go to the 16s, you could carry more. It was lighter, but I kept a 16 and a 14, and depending on what you were doing or thought you may get into, would determine whether I carried one or the other. I never had a Car 15. My second tour, we had one that my platoon sergeant, Sergeant Ayers, had one, but they were rare for us. They were extremely, we didn't have them. And some guys carried a shotgun. I would say I knew of more people in the battalion that carried a shotgun. We did not in my teams. Sniper rifle. If you were going to a fixed OP or something like that, you might take one, but not if you're humping bush. I never remember if it's a Remington 70 or a Winchester 70 or a Remington 700. I don't know which number goes to which.
I think it's 700.
But it's those two weapons that, very long weapon, and we took it up on Hill 452 and fun to play with.
Now that you're mentioning that, we've got just a slew of questions, which I'm glad is coming in. Here's I've actually got a better shot of 452 for y'all to look at to see how high up they are. But this is Rabbi and the boys in 67 with Team Dogma, as you see up here. And where exactly is 452?
It is, I want to say southwest of Danang. It's across the river from the Nong Song coal mine. And you're getting into the Quezon Mountains on that side. And from there, you could see like miles and miles, and out through Antenna Valley. And up there was where the photo was, where you see the folks coming out of the chopper on the side door.
Oh, okay. Yes. Guys, I'm pretty sure I've shown that, and at some point I'll find it, but that is a wonderful photo. Was that strictly a OP that y'all would use, or was that a radio relay site for teams?
It was a radio relay OP.
Wow.
Because we typically you're getting into places where you're further than comm will go, and you'll have an OP or radio relay, or you'll have another team farther out in the bush acting as a relay because you're even further out than that, so that you had communication. And I was going to send you a picture or two. I saw a couple that had AOs, the aerial observers, which we used black coat a lot. And, that would be similar to SOG's Covey.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a hell of a view right there. And I can imagine, with that fog and everything laying in, that could cause some issues for y'all, and especially teams on the ground with y'all's radios. Jeez. So would y'all would just periodically, like the SOG teams, get radio relay site duty and just shift every so often?
Roughly, it'd be a week, and between force and the battalion, they would man 452. There was another one called Dong Din that was in Elephant Valley. The hill was about 880, hill 880. And from there, you could see out toward the Danang Harbor that way. But you could monitor the bad guys trying to come in down by the river, through Elephant Valley, through the Garden of Eden, and trying to come in towards the Danang area.
Let me go ahead and get to some questions because if I keep looking through all these awesome pictures we've got to show, I'll never get to them. Daniel, he might not answer. He's very modest. But Daniel would like to know. Well, I thought misread that completely. How many people did you take out on patrol for your team?
Personally, the smallest I went was 5, and I think one time maybe 12. During the monsoon, you ran heavier. Or I know one time we went out and stayed for a couple of weeks and got air supplied. And I'd have to go back and check, but probably 12, 13 maybe. And well, like Andy one time, he took most of his group, depending on what he was getting into. When he bagged the sappers, he had quite a few folks with him that day. But 7, 6, 8 was a very solid number. A lot of times we ran 7, and we might take a new person, a lieutenant, on a snap-in. After Captain Barnes got killed and Sergeant Blankenship, we had gotten a couple of new folks. That's when I got Gunny T. And with Gunny T, we also got Sergeant Larry Livingston. And we took Sergeant Livingston on his first 2 snap-in patrols. And Livingston went on to become a 2-star general. But very outstanding, intelligent. And somewhere, I might have sent you a picture of him in the bush on the first patrol we took him out on. But
I think, yeah, I'm gonna have to find all these photos. We'll end up having to go through them and get them identified. Here are a few weapon questions concerning the stoners. Galil Hub would like to know how was the loading of the belts on the stoners and how reliable were they?
Fully reliable from my memory. I don't know people getting in any problems. I remember we used, it was like a plastic rectangular, I don't want to call it a bucket, but just it hung on the side that held 100 rounds linked. So it just kind of clicked on there and fed perfect. I know they also had a drum that, like the old Tommy gun looking thing, I think it held 200 rounds. Now that, I guess if you got to the end of the 200, hopefully you had another drum or you had time to reload it. I'm not sure how that worked, but the belts worked fine. And if you were in that much of a heated barrel, you didn't really need to put them in any container. So
yeah, from everyone we've spoke to, and especially with Andy, and that they said they wish they would have never taken them away. Quite frankly.
Well, it was a mistake in their judgment, which they should have been pushing to get us more. The thing, for us was y'all need to be upgrading us rather than limiting us. And, in our training, our tactics, our whatever's, you're always striving to be better. I mean, whether it be your immediate action drills, everything. You wanted to be better at what we did because it affected your safety, all our guys' safety, and performance of the job. So, I mean, if we were stuck still using grease guns, what would we be doing? I mean, we wouldn't have survived.
I hate to even think about that. Good Lord.
I mean, in the beginning with a 14, you used to have the adapter to shoot a Willie Peter off the thing. And with the blooper, the M79, and you got your regular 40 millimeter, you got your flechettes, you could shoot gas out of thing. So, and then in the beginning of 67 too, and when we got the Stoner and the 16, we were just really starting to use CS gas too. And our teams were mandated to carry the gas. We all had gas masks and stuff like that. And my sister team in 1st Platoon, they were the first ones to use it to clear, like an ambush site, a firefight site, because the bad guys didn't have the, gas masks. And that was new to them. And just constant evolution.
We've got another question or two right here. Let me pull this up to the side. I think I actually found Mr. Livingston in the bush. Isn't that Mr. Livingston?
That's him. That's him. He was I used to call him a baggy pants sergeant, baggy pants E5. And as his career evolved, and I talked to him when I was a civilian, and he was of the general rank, I don't think I ever reminded him of that. But a great person, a great leader, great knowledge. And he was he was out of 2nd Force. So, when he came to us, he had a plethora of training. And, we grew just, taking him out. And then he ran 2 with me and 2 with countersign, and then took over team counselor. And, and his first force career was on the way.
Wow, that's didn't y'all have more than one Force Recon member to rise to the ranks of general? I thought there was another one besides Livingston.
Wayne Rawlins.
Okay.
Wayne was a 69 lieutenant. He made general, and there were five or six out of 1st Recon Battalion that went on to become generals.
There's a SOG guy that he did his SOG career and then went over to the Marine Corps for some unknown reason. I have no idea, but he went over and was in the recon community, and he actually rose to the ranks of General Helland, if I'm not mistaken. There's 2 more gun questions that are interesting that ties up, and then there's a very interesting question that might get a little in depth. But Galil was wondering, did y'all ever chop the M14s down, or did y'all always run them full size?
There were a few that chopped the stock. None of my guys that I recall, they shortened the barrels at all. But what you might want to call it a pistol grip type on the 14. Typically, the first thing we did in country was, you had to take off that metal butt plate and all that for the weight. Tape up the butt plate, or the wooden stock. We taped that with rigger's tape, and no sling. Tape the sling swivel. But
let's see.
I've got chop them up.
There's an interesting photo, and I wonder if this is kind of what you're talking about. This is Bob Howard. He's got a chopped 14 with a foregrip on his, but of course the barrel's been chopped.
Yeah, I enjoy reading the stories on Mr. Howard.
Yeah, he's quite the guy, and definitely proud of him here in Alabama. I'm still hoping we're gonna get a little memorial to him They did one for General Eldon Bargewell, who we lost several years back. Hoping to get one started for Colonel Howard. I know we had one more question with weapons. Here we go. Did you ever combine Willie Pete and CS with any of your claymores, or what was y'all use with the gas?
I don't recall ever doing anything like that. No.
Okay.
I mean, the CS, you know, we kept our CS in case we needed to try and clear it, or as a deterrent. Willie Peter, you know, you throw a Willie Peter at somebody, there's nothing that smells worse. The only thing smells worse than burning flesh is your own burning flesh. And that stuff gets on you. That's terrible. But no, never combined them. We put our claymores out religiously at night, while we're in our harbor sites and stuff like that.
Wow. This one comes up, and Jason would like to know. I know it can get in depth, and you can do it as much as you'd like, in depth as you like. But could you explain the difference between Battalion Recon and Force Recon, especially during the Vietnam era and your time frame and what's going on?
A lot of what was going on then, a little bit of different training. All right, the Force guys were more jump, more scuba, more Recondo school, more Pathfinders. The Battalion guys, not so much. Many were scuba. I mean, when we'd send scuba classes, they went from both. So you had scuba in the Battalion, and some of the guys in Battalion were also jumpers, because they might have been in Force at one time, or Anglico, naval gunfire guys were jumpers. But the difference, we ran similar patrols. One of the differences supposedly was within the Arty fan versus outside the Arty fan, more distance for us. And that's a yes and no, because a lot of times we ran the same turf. And like in 67, we were attached to, we're OpCon to the Battalion. And we ran the same areas, and we may run farther out past Happy Valley, or when you get to Thong Duck, you're starting to get out west. And we regularly ran out there. And at that point, I don't think the Battalion so much. And the Battalion, I remember in the earlier days, ran a lot more folks. And some of it was, I think they ran more platoon size, and they may set up a base and then run teams from that, so that they had a different little scheme going on, so that they might go out with, I've seen as many on a report that said 23. And one instance, you're running 23, a point in the tail end Charlie, have a firefight. Because as you're snaking through or up a mountain, or, traversing sideways across, it's unwieldy. It's, it's not like the grunts marching through an open area. But that's a rare occurrence. And I know they evolved until, in 70, they ran a lot of 6 and 7 and 8s, and pretty much same. But the training was a difference, and one of the main things I think in the beginning was the Arty fan within the artillery, beyond the artillery. And more folks in force were more school trained. But
So there was a lot of there was definitely a lot of overlap with you guys. Like you said, running in the same area, and y'all were technically based in the same area for quite some time as well, weren't you?
oh, oh yeah, we lived together. I mean, there wasn't a big difference to where somebody should get a big head and look down their nose at someone else. Was I force? Yep, proud of it. You ran with the battalion? Hey, proud of you, brother. A difference, but not terribly huge, I wouldn't say. And
People can get a good glimpse, in my opinion, on outside looking in and from talking to both force and battalion. If you want a good instance to look at, a battalion recon mission that ended up getting a lot of press and a lot of writing about it, so you can learn about it, would be I believe it was it Sergeant Jimmy Howard up on Hill 488.
that's
He
correct.
had he had something like 20 people with him. He was battalion recon, and he earned the Medal of Honor that night for
Yeah,
fighting that hill battle.
yeah, they were like I want to say 16,
Oh, okay.
and that took place right when Force did its first combat jump, and the jump was successful. It only lasted a day because of you know, the bad guys had a dog, and it felt compromised. And I always think that Howard said he would stay an extra that last day, that last night, and instead of getting pulled out, that was right then at that time of that jump. And I don't know if he might have acted as a relay or something going on there, but no, hands off to those guys. I got to meet a couple of them. That was about 6 months before I got there.
Wow, man. Let's see. How often would what's the rotation like? How often were you guys out on missions each month?
Uh, Again, it varies. I've run 5 in a month, and that's hustling. That's hustling. And uh, anywhere from 2 to 5.
Wow.
So, and depending on weather, and you may go out. Typically, 5-day. I want to say 5-day might be rule of thumb. So if you're going out 4 times, I mean, that's 20 out of 30 days you're in the bush. 5 times you really pushed it. 2 times, that's 10 days in the bush. You're back. Who knows what happened? Why you only went 2? But our platoons, we had like 15 guys and 2 teams. So we had 1 corpsman and an officer. So you could have 16, 17 guys, and somebody's always doing something. Somebody's got an ill or whatever. So you're regulated to how many guys you've got, and a lot of times we would need a secondary radio guy. So if we were running 7 or 8 people, and you've got your primary radio man, who's going to carry the secondary radio? And sometimes, we had enough guys to cover it out of our teams. I mean, we might steal somebody out of countersign, and put them with Dogma, or we would go to the comm shack, because there were communicators that, and there were a couple or so that were not belonging to a team, but one of my good friends today at Bo Belinsky was in the comm center. He was a radio guy, but he would run with us, and he ran with Andy, and then he finished with me. So he ran a good amount of patrols, actually working out at the comm center or comm platoon. Corpsman, we only had one corpsman for each of the platoons. So like in up until, let's see, Doc Ott was with us to August, and then we got Doc Lewis. All right. I ran with Doc Ott a couple of times, but mostly he ran with the other team, and we ran without a corpsman. So we always had to carry, Unit 1. We had to be somewhat knowledgeable, or someone in particular had to be very knowledgeable. And then with Doc Lewis, I don't think I was with Doc, and I forgot to look until the last time I went out over New Year's into '68. I didn't run with him at all, and he was with Countersign. So, sometimes we needed to go. If we thought, Doc Ott was with Countersign and we were going somewhere that might behoove us to take a corpsman, we would go to Battalion Aid Station that we had there at Camp Reasoner, and could we get a corpsman? And not bad guys. Some of them, they just weren't bush ready. And the patrol that Lieutenant Barnes and Blankenship got blown up with the Bouncing Betty. On that patrol, no corpsman, and they got one from the Battalion Aid Station. All right, not a problem. But when they landed, the LZ you couldn't see totally to the ground, and when you hopped out, well, there were rocks were strewn all over the place, and by chance, the corpsman turned an ankle, and they didn't medevac him, and they tried to get through it. So they moved a little bit that first day, and Lieutenant Barnes wanted to, they knew where they were going, and they knew there was a trail that was going down to the Antenna Valley Pass, that it was a jungle-type wooded area between the two open valley spots. So there was a trail that went down the mountain into that. And they were humping the bush, but because of the corpsman's ankle, he felt it would be better to run the trail for 100, 200, a couple hundred meters, then get back off the bush, saving his ankle to go down into the ravine, which it didn't work. There was a Bouncing Betty that they hit, and that was the aftermath in their equipment. And we lost two of my favorite people and one of Andy's favorite people, and then that became the basis for Andy's revenge patrol, and him being indoctrinated to good old Sergeant Watson. So,
wow. And you sent me a picture of Mr. Watson, and everybody got a kick out of him when Andy spoke about him. So here is a photo that I've never seen, and y'all are getting to see as well, of Mr. Watson himself.
Quite a character.
That's what I was gonna ask. Did you get to spend a lot of time with him, or was it just sporadic on patrols every now and again? Or
He was with us, and then he was not. I mean, he was part of our platoon, and he was with Andy, and then he wasn't a regular around, but you hit and you miss. You never knew what he was going to come up with, and from the last anybody'd seen of him, after he got out, I believe he joined the Army, and then he worked for IBM, and then the last to see him said he left his family and disappeared. So we don't know whatever happened and what rumor might be the factual.
oh man, that is a wild. So I thought Andy had said he was working at IBM last. He had connections, like you said. I had no idea that he was quote unquote missing, if you will. Wow, that is
Nobody knows where he went or what happened. I don't know about missing, but
just
yeah,
may have disappeared and gone radio silent, so to speak.
yeah, he was, very, very into, the British side because he's in, and later in life, when I was with a bunch of the third force guys at a reunion, I met a fella. His name is Mullen, another character. Well, Mullen was the polar opposite, and Mullen was an IRA guy. And there was a third one, Scotty, and Mullen wanted Scotty to hook him up and meet Andy, and I'm not Andy. Our guy Roy, and he didn't want any part of it. He nothing to do with the IRAs and whatever the history was, but yeah.
Wow.
Just tidbits, and that was later in life. So.
Wow. You had mentioned I always butcher the name. Is it Thong Duck? The area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Y'all, there was actually an A camp there. I think A109, if I'm not mistaken.
A109.
Did you guys y'all had some contact with them? What was it like coming across and visiting the guys at the A camp when y'all did?
Well, wasn't really visiting them, but worked with them. In '67, the guys, they would run a patrol out of their camp, and I know one particular one where bad guys came up the side of a hill, and Finley and Ralph bagged a couple of them. The rest ran back down the hill, and McNeamer, I think, was on the radio and called the Special Forces guys because they were out on a patrol, so we knew who was where, and said, "Look, we just had this firefight, and these guys are coming your way." Well, it turned out that I think they actually captured 4 of them then. So great communication between them. I know in '70 we used to keep 2 guys out there on the radio, and the only time I actually got into the camp, we were northwest, further up in the mountains, way out, nearly off of the Thong Duck map sheet, and the ambush, and Sarnares got killed, and we got the pictures I sent you, the spy rig. We got spy rigged out, and fortunately, we were close. The A109 was close to us, so they took us there to land and get off. And we came in there, and as we got off the spy rig, it turned out that a high school classmate of mine, John Wigner, was the executive officer at the Green Beret camp. And simply amazing. And we got off and then took care of our gear and got on the choppers and flew out. But yeah, John's a good guy. He stayed Special Forces his whole career. And now, and that team there, that's on Hill 510. That's about 8 clicks from A109. We used that hill as a platoon patrol base. And that's Sergeant Christopher's team. The guy right in the middle, that's Sergeant Ledford with air panel on his leg. But they had humped it off of the 510 down to Hill 487, which overlooks the river further down. They got hit and got spy rigged and then came to us and we got them off. But there's a series of 3 photos that I keep on my wall. I like to see them flying around.
Hey, I'll end up. I've got so many of them. I'll get to them eventually because we'll have to run through the photos because there's a bunch of amazing photos on here that you sent me. And by the way, thank you for allowing us to view these. These are awesome photos, and folks know how much I like them, and other folks like seeing them. There's some other questions, but before that, one of my favorites that I think you sent or showed me. Did you get to interact with Colonel Maggie at all, Martha Raye?
That's it there. We were getting ready to go out, and they held us up, and she flew in. She came in on, we were on the LZ at LZ Finch, and she came in, all bubbly, greeting us. And Milton Jackson, my radio man, Dave Highland, me, and then Vern Rojek is right behind her head, and he still bitches because how come nobody wants to see my face? But it was great to meet her, and that's all we got to spend time with her because we flew out right after that.
Oh wow, man. She sounds like she was quite the lady. I mean, she was always out there trying to see as many of y'all as she could. I mean, she what a lady.
She cared. I mean, she was upfront about it. She cared. She didn't care, who liked or didn't like it. That she did care, and nothing but respect.
I've got a funny story. I can't even remember if it was SOG or just an A camp, but there was a photo or a poster made that the guy had made, and I won't cuss, but it said "F communism," and she absolutely loved it. Was laughing every time she saw it, and asked the commander if she could take that home, and he was like, of course, and gave it to her. She had it hanging up in her house until the day she died. And supposedly at a party one evening, she had some Hollywood actresses over and all that. And one of them made a snide remark about it and is like, why do you have that in here? And she basically said, if you don't like it, you can get the fuck out. And I always thought that was great. She was feisty until the end.
Yep.
Let's see here. Considering we were just talking about some field work, what's the standard process for overnight stay in the field for a Force Recon team?
Well, first looking for good spots, and a good spot would be where you can get into, and anybody trying to get into it's going to make a lot of racket and tip you off. And typically, as dusk would be hitting, you wanted to eat for the final time. hit the head for the final time. And as it got darker, you would go from where the bad guys may think you're going to harbor and move 25, 50 meters, whatever you could in a short period of time into the thick spot, and get together in a 360. Sometimes, and many times, it's definitely not level. Sometimes it's on a steep grade where you put a 2-3 inch tree between your legs, or you're laying aside a tree so you don't go sliding down. But the closest to dark is when you want to get into that final spot. And one of the freaky things is when you go from that final eat chow and prep and before you move, then you do move. And when you're in your final harbor site, you can still see out where you were. And having seen bad guys trying to tiptoe through where you were looking for you. Very eerie feeling, and it reinforces the thought of being very precise on how you shut down for the day and move into a harbor. And you never get careless.
Did you guys ever have any ambushes or any night incidents when y'all had selected a RON, so to speak?
I never got hit during the night. Another time, besides seeing the bad guys in my previous spot, we hadn't been in a fight yet, but the hair on the back of your neck is up, and you can feel it's imminent, and it's like, well, in the morning, the early hours of the morning, something's going to happen. And we were right by a stream, so during the night in the dark, we slipped into the stream and got away. Just so happened that Pistorino took a header that night and fell in the stream and went under, but I was right behind him. We got out, we were fine. No bad guys hurt us and came running to the stream, and we went a couple 100 meters and got out, so that in the morning it wasn't, we weren't that apprehensive, and the bad guys, if they were waiting for us, hopefully they were still there waiting for us. But I know Team Hateful, I remember them getting hit, and we were all alert. I was back at Reasoner. They got hit during the night, and I remember Telford Mangrum got gut shot, but that was they got hit during the dark, and I know teams in the battalion, they got hit during the night. But personally, I didn't have that experience.
Wow. I can, I mean, hearing stories of y'all out there at night and all of that, I get goosebumps anytime talking to y'all. Even though I speak to y'all all the time, I still get goosebumps when y'all are selecting RON and out there at night. It just, ooh, spooky as hell.
We could put out the PSIDs, the sensors, and they alert, and it's like, man, now I'm anxious all night long. And it's like, and then what's going to happen in the morning, and the evolution, and I saw it with some of the in Tilt's books or John Plaster, that with the trackers, they weren't as fluent in the early years, but in 70, I really noticed it, that they became very good at it, and they would always try and bracket you and force force you to go in a certain direction. But reading his book really reinforced my memory on that stuff. And I can vividly know, how they just fire a shot on one side, 100, 200 meters this way, 100 that. So, when I ran tail end, I would just do, I'd do one-man dog legs, just and set an ambush, see if some sucker was trying to, sneak up and peep me and make them pay. But
and y'all were I would probably say the majority of the time y'all were coming against mainline NVA, weren't you? With the occasional VC, but the majority NVA.
A lot of NVA as time went along. Before TET 68, there were a lot of the VC units yet. TET 68 wiped out, I don't know what percentage, but I'd say quite the majority. I mean, so in 67, you had a mixed bag, and you'd see some in black pajamas, you'd see some in some kind of utilities. Andy was a little more knowledgeable rather than, a snuffy. I didn't have some of the knowledge Andy did, but I know it was like 2nd NVA division was in our area, and the 90th regiment of this, and we just knew there was lots of bad guys, and it didn't matter because if we were in our zone, and anything else in our zone is free game. So the communication had to be good, like even dealing in Thong Duck. If one of the special force teams was out, we had to know where they may be going. They had to know where we were. Otherwise, we'd call an airstrike on them, or you don't know what. And fortunately, I didn't blow up no good guys.
Goodness, thank goodness. There was another patrol question here that I was going to get into. Let's see. This will kind of tie into what I was going to ask, but Jason was wondering who was the biggest man on your team that you went out with, and who would be the smallest?
The biggest? Oh boy. Rocky Schmidt was a big guy. Me being 5'7", somebody 6'1" is kind of big. I do recall. There's one picture, and I think you've got it. There's a guy, and he looks like he's about 8 feet tall standing the way he's standing, but he was about 6'3". Probably Big Daddy Hughes, R.L. Hughes, a giant black guy. And if you saw the picture that Fred Vogel had of the dive team, his dive team up at Phu Bai, there's a set of about 8 guys. And Holmes is over on Hughes is on, when you face it, on the right side. But he was a big guy. And small guys, there were a lot of us, probably 5'7", a couple 5'6". There's Hughes, and Rocky Schmidt's on the Schmidt's number 5 and Hughes is number 8. Both of them big guys. Rocky ran with me all year. And
is Major Vogel down there at number 3.
Legends. Vogel. Number 2 is Ed Uncle. He was in my team.
Oh wow.
Ed was actually, he was a rigger, parachute rigger, and loved the bush. When I went back in 70, I found him. He was at air delivery. he was still in country or back in country. Bob Buddha. Good group of folks right there.
Trying to find.
Rocky lives in Sweden. He's been in Sweden for better than 30 years. But
we've got a good one of Pee Wee being power lifted by one of the guys. That's quite funny. I think the guys will get a kick out of that. Hang on one second, guys. I apologize. And Pee Wee was Pee Wee smaller than you?
I would blame him for being smaller than me. Not much, not much. But me, Pee Wee, Jim Hawkshurst, Dan McNeamer, we were pretty identical in size. But Pee Wee, I would have to say, was the smallest. And I talked to Pee Wee earlier in the week. But yeah, Finley P. Johnson. He's one of the strongest people I ever knew. And he was from Philadelphia, about 50 miles from where I grew up. Pee Wee was from outside of Pittsburgh. And
I've got another good photo of Pee Wee actually ready for combat. While I'm looking for that, here's one of Finley where he's decked out. What were your positions on patrols? Were you point, or you mentioned you ran tail end Charlie quite a lot? What was your position?
It depended on timing. In the beginning, the first couple of patrols, I was like, I don't know, man, 5 or 6. Carried the M79, M14, and then gravitated from that. And that's when Pistorino and I became point and backup point. And dependent, you know, when Mike went to jump school, I ran point. When he came back, now we were number 1 and number 2. There's Mike. And we were together all that year. And my second tour, I was primarily assistant patrol leader, which I ran tail end Charlie, most all the patrols, or patrol leader. And so I had experience running all of them, except I didn't carry a radio. I didn't even like to carry the spare battery. But everybody had to carry something like, but I never carried the radio. But I did all the point, backup point, team leader, rear end Charlie.
What would you consider personally? What was the I hate to say most important, because on a recon team, all of it is. But what would be, I guess, the most important or the hardest, I guess you could say, on a force recon team?
The hardest job? Physically, it might be running point, because of, you know, the varied vegetation. You gotta fight that, you know, whether it be wait a minute vines or thick bush, any of the terrain. And being first. So you're fighting all of that, concerned about bad guys. You never know sometimes when you're going to part a bush and there's a trail, because there are trail networks everywhere, or never. But that, I think point caused, you know, me the most anxiety and physical. That's why, you know, Mike and I running together, you know, so much, to try and take the burden of concern of bad guys getting the jump on them, to where that was my job, that I would do that and get the jump and taking care of him while he was, you know, running the point and watching sign. Tail end, tail end was difficult trying to hide your trail and mask it. But all extremely important. It's just, I think, all the factors going into it, the most harrowing is probably the point. I'm just going through one of the patrols with Pistorino because, I'm writing a story on that stuff. But he parted the bushes, and as he stepped, there was a trail when he came out. And when he stepped on a punji stick. And at first I didn't know what he did. He just stopped and he looked. And, the eyes are getting big. And I'm waiting, and he didn't move. And finally I went up to him and looked down, and I could see the punji stick, and I bent down and I could feel the point of it behind, the backside of his boot, the lower part of it, down low in his calf. And I'm going, oh shit, went right through his leg. And the other part is there was a trail right there. So the rest of the team came up and security went out. I undid, his boot laces, and the inside of your jungle boot, you had that green material flap in there. So this punji stick had gone up through the laces to this fold in this material, and it must have been just enough that it angled it to the side of his leg to where I thought it went through his leg at first, but it went right parallel to his leg and didn't even make a scratch on him. And okay, so his eyes got back to normal, and fixed his boot. We paralleled this patrol. We found 14 or 16 booby traps, and moved away from these trails. And a couple of hours later, and Mikey stops, and we're out in Elephant Valley at this time. And you might run into elephants. They were out there. But he stops and he looks back at me. And, we had wrist compasses. So, you check a map periodically, but for the most part, you're looking at your wrist compass following direction. So you always knew where you were going. And he looks back at me, and instead of going, forward, he's saying, let's make a left turn. So he's flagging me to go left. I'm shaking my head, no. I'm giving him, go forward. He's shaking his head, no. Go left. So we did this. It seemed like 10 minutes. It might have been a minute. Finally, I go up to him, and he's standing at a dry stream bed. There's all kind of bramble and sticker bushes and vines. And I look down in there, and there's a tiger sitting there on its haunches. Just seeing it is threatening. However, it doesn't look like it wants to do anything or is going to do anything. And I'm afraid to turn, from this thing in case we got to shoot it. Well, I look back now, and the patrol leader is man 3. And he's looking at me, and he's flagging me, go forward. And I'm shaking my head, go left. Finally, another period of time goes by, and he comes up. He looked down, he saw that tiger. He's giving us, let's go left. Let's go left. But over the years, we constantly laugh about this. We moved off and went up toward a small hill, which turned into be a mountain, and never saw the tiger again, and it didn't bother us. But stuff will hurt you. So.
Is that the closest y'all came to a tiger? And you personally, or did you have more run-ins with them?
That's the closest that I came. That was pretty close. That was only several feet. My second tour in May of '70, we had a team Rockmat went. They were up in Bach Ma, and they were up on a razorback, and it's very narrow. I want to say 15 meters across the top. Typically, like it was so steep, it nearly a cliff on the sides. So when they went to harbor, they were up on top of this thing. There wasn't no places to go. So instead of going in a 360 normal, they were linear. And the patrol leader was Sergeant Flager. And Flager was on the one end, and next to him was a good friend of mine, Indian, Rex Red Wing. And during that night, they heard noise. They heard a muffled scream, and being pitch black, they couldn't see nothing. And they didn't know what happened to Flager. Flager was missing. Well, it turned out that a tiger crept up, choked him out, drug him, and gutted him just on the slight slope before you go off the cliff. Then in the morning, when they went to look for him, they saw leg from the bush. They found Flager's body, and they had found a bush hat or something, and they went to recover the body, but the tiger was still there, wanted his kill, and they all fired at it, threw a couple hand grenades and stuff. They don't know if they hit it, just scared it, or what. For all they know, they chased it off the cliff, but they didn't see the tiger after that. And then they had the jungle penetrator to get Flager off the razorback.
My God, I remember y'all mentioning that, and I've read and seen some posts about that. That is, I always hate hearing about servicemen being attacked by tigers or anything out in the bush, and that's one of the more harrowing incidents of tigers and recon teams coming in contact. God, on the subject of animals, what was the strangest animal encounter? Unless the tiger was the strangest one, did you have another strange animal encounter in the bush?
Well, encounters with snakes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, snakes were there. Leeches. They're just zillion animals. There were what you call barking deer. There were actually bear. It didn't happen
with
to
the
me.
Apes.
Oh, the rock apes. Yeah, how can I forget rock apes? We harbored one night, and damn if rock apes didn't come into the canopy above us and just give us holy hell. And we didn't get up in the middle of the night and try and get away from them. Very, very strange. I mean, you didn't want to you couldn't shoot them or anything. But then in the morning when it was light, they went on their merry way and left us be. A bear. In Andy's book, well, and I sent you a picture, our Georgia Peach, Charles Williams, big burly guy. One night, he had an encounter with a bear, came right through the harbor site. Strange. That would have been like two big bears, big, strong. He was strong. I tell you, he would take a case of sea rations for like 3 or 4 days and carry a radio and do everything. He a great guy. He was only with me till probably March of '67. He went down to Andy, and I was in Hawaii in '69 for 3 or 4 months at Kaneohe Bay, and Willie was with me. I got there and he was there, which was pretty cool. But that was an encounter. Snakes. I mean, had a cobra bow up and fan out at him, in front of me and Rocky Schmidt. And, again, just several feet. He looked at, when he thought we were no threat, went and stuck his head in a hole, and he barely got his head in there, and Rocky whacked it off. He took care of that shit. And it's like, I don't know, so many things. Leeches, everybody got leech stories.
Oh, God.
I hated them, but the worst thing for me was I woke up one morning and had one right across both my lips, and I couldn't open my mouth. At first, I didn't know what was wrong. And, I got the bug juice and got it off. But the worst one was Pee-wee. Poor Pee-wee got medevac for 3 weeks because he got a leech. A leech went up his Pee-wee, and he was gone 3 weeks. And when I first found him several years after we were out, he said, "Do you remember when the leech went up my pipper?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Nobody at the VFW believes me." I thought, well, it's true, Pee-wee. I remember. But strange stuff. Probably there's more strange stuff. There's Pee-wee. Look how long that M14 is compared to Pee-wee. Yeah, and he's got a M79 there. And he might have weighed 115. With all that gear, 200.
I was about to say, he is loaded down with gear. Good God.
And there's nothing he wouldn't do. Nothing he wouldn't do. A good man. Lots of Pee-wee stories. When you talk to Maynard will tell you. But when Weasel got killed and Billy Gilmore, Pee-wee being an economy size, they had to get in the extract chopper through the side door. So the first thing they do is they toss Pee-wee up in there, and they're getting the bodies and stuff in. But the crew chief, the gunner on the 46, got wounded. Pee-wee, he's John Wayne. He's on that 50 caliber. Nothing he went through. Good man. Good man.
I always love seeing pics of him and hearing about him. He sounds like he was.
But he's smaller than me. I have to say that.
I've got another few good photos of him. I think one where he's actually still got his mohawk that he is rocking. Did y'all always wear bush hats, or did y'all wear the quote unquote cravat Rambo style, or did y'all always have bush hats?
Bush hats or sweatbands. Rarely did you see the cravat type. I remember one sergeant in the battalion always did, but I was partial to the hat. Keep that, with all the cami paint that got into it, they would form pretty good. So you could lower the brim as raining, sunny, and you turn it like a pirate hat. It's like whatever humor was in your day. Amazing. Pretty much, I always kept a piece of camouflage parachute to wear around my neck, which I could also I would use as a headband, that kind of stuff.
With what would or I guess you typically, what would you carry for your M14 ammo wise? How much ammo were you humping?
I recall 15 magazines with a 14, up to 20, because they were so damn heavy. But probably 15 for the most part. and 16s, 20, and sometimes more. But that's probably the typical 15 and 20.
Are y'all carrying? Was there a standard grenade loadout or claymores or anything like that, or what?
Well, out of say 7 guys, you carried 2 to 3 claymores. The M79, like when I read, say, Tilt's book, a couple of the yards might only be an M79 guy, where one of our guys carried his rifle plus a 79 plus 36, 42, whatever HE rounds, and then the rest of us carried HE rounds and flechettes. So,
Man, y'all were humping.
Recon teams were loaded for bear, and the bad guys, they weren't too keen in small numbers taking you on, and we could show some firepower.
Not only that, I mean, didn't you? I can't remember. Didn't you actually get to use the USS New Jersey to call in air one time, or call in artillery?
But the New Jersey fired a lot for the guys in Chulai, and I think there was another ship that fired in our area, and right now yeah, if I told you, I probably made it up. Sometimes we had to put a team on a ship. Like, there were grunts. So, and occasionally we would send a team and that was another job or hairy job. Or we would do Pathfinder type patrols where there was going to be like an operation. And I know we did one for the grunts and Arvins that they were going to go in a certain area. So we went out, clicks away and humped to where we could observe the LZ. And the bad guys must have got the same info because they were there waiting on them, except they didn't know that we showed up, and they got their ass smoked.
What would in your, well, you had so much time. I guess for Jason's sake, we'll put in all of your service. What was the most dangerous area you went into to where you knew you needed to load up on ammo?
Out and you did stingray patrols, and you were, prisoner snatches. People take that personal when you try and steal them out of the jungle. They don't. Probably the majority of them don't work well. My second tour, I had to do one with a lieutenant that wanted to, from the battalion, that wanted to run a force team, and we only had a couple of teams left. We were fading out, and as I recall, I wasn't going to go, and there were 7 guys, so I said, "Yeah, I'll go." I was the 8th guy, so this lieutenant took another lieutenant and made him the assistant team leader over me and my partner, who was a team leader, and they wanted to do a prisoner snatch. And we were out on these little mounds, these little tiny, rolling hills with 2 and 3 foot grass with trails around every hill. And it's like, if anybody's here, they're going to see you. And it's like, it was
Hang on, guys. I notice he's been having a little connectivity issues, so let's hold tight here. But I know we're going to have to do a part 2 anyways, because he's got a lot of stories and a lot of photos for us to go through. So let's hold on a second. If it freezes up, we'll we'll do a part 2 and finish everything up. And especially because I've got 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I've got like 29 more photos. Some are action photos. So if we happen to have to cut out for today, it'll be okie dokie, because we've got a lot of good photos, and a lot of these I've never seen before of Rabbi and the boys. So let's just wait and see here for a sec and see if he'll bump back in. Because we're at the 2-hour mark now. He either got a call or something happened, because it immediately froze as opposed to just freezing up a bit. Let me see if he messaged me. Okey dokey. Ferguson Brothers, that's a great question. He was around at that time. I've got that written down. And David, that's a great question. I'm writing both of those down right now in case we get messed up for today. OP Buffalo and Night Ops. Okay, guys, what we're going to do is, let me get back with Rabbi. We'll put a pin in right now. This will be part 1, and we'll come back for part 2. So keep an eye out. We might hop back on, but we're going to put a pin in it right now, and I'll get back with y'all. So I apologize, but stuff happens. So, Galil, we're definitely getting a part 2. We're not even, I've got pages and pages of notes that I take with veterans when I've been speaking these past years. So we're going to do a part 2. Do not worry about that. It's taken a long time to set this up, so we're going to have him back. Y'all bear with me, and I'll get back with y'all and update with y'all. So I apologize. Rabbi's had some issues on with his computer, so just bear with him, and I'll get back to y'all and update y'all. So goodbye for today, or maybe goodbye for now. We might kick back off in a bit. So keep your eyes peeled.